Yummy like a gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for June 23rd, 2023 for the next hour or so. Let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, Microsoft is finally facing off against the FTC in a courtroom, and that has provided some juicy details about the industry. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host of Game Mess Mornings. It's Jordan Miner, everybody. Jordan, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good about everything. I am excited because you have a book behind you that I am in, and I'm very narcissistic, so I like to hear about that. What's up with this book?
It's not just behind me; it's also right here.
There it
in front
is.
of me. Yeah, this
Good-looking tome right there. I'm really into that.
That's just the outside. Look, you should look inside too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is my book, my first book, Video Game of the Year. It's coming out in less than 3 weeks. Coming out on July 11th. And the whole premise of it is that it's a year-by-year guide to the best games, most important games, most kind of trend-setting influential games of every year from 1977 until today. So every chapter is about a single game, mostly. So, like Pong in 1977 or like Metal Gear Solid in 1998. So that's kind of the main chapters are about that game. And then throughout that are kind of like runner-up picks from me. And then I'm very excited about more than 75 guest blurbs about other alternative games from folks like you and a lot of other folks in the extended Giant Bomb universe and just sort of throughout all the games industry. So it's more than 300 pages. It's meant to be like my kind of comprehensive take on video game history and sort of like a mainstream sort of arts criticism of games as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate what I've read so far about how you do like position everything and make it very appealing. I think to an audience that's like this would be a fun thing to have, because I think these are the kinds of subject matters where people are like I'm interested in video games, but like where do I start? This is the kind of thing I think would be a good place to start. And the book really reads in that way where it's like, hey, this game is important, but maybe you don't understand why. Let's explain it very simply. And it kind of does that over and over again. And I really, really like that. It just really does look good inside and out. It's a really well put together a book. What was that process like? Is that because I could maybe write a book, but then the process of like getting that finished product looks like it's a significant amount of labor. What was that process like for you?
A lot of lucky breaks, even just getting an agent in the beginning.
Yeah.
People might also know me from my viral Street Shark story. If you don't, that's a really fun thing to look up.
Yeah, what is the Street Shark story? Just real quick. Yeah.
I'll take the whole hour if I go into that. That involved me as a child writing fake episodes of this cartoon called Street Sharks, and then those lies spread throughout the internet. And then that website got acquired by bigger websites, and then it got to the point where Netflix had the wrong information, even though they had the real shows, and people were convinced that Henry Winkler was on the cast. Real kind of Metal Gear Solid 2 vibes of just internet making history,
incepting the internet. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
so that's covered all over the internet. But that got me noticed by an agent, and then even that was like years and years of kind of just working with that agent and pitching ideas. Finally, we just sort of settled on this, or we came to this, and then we found a publisher, Abrams, that there's a lot of good synergy with them, considering some of the other books they've made.
Yeah, can I like, what is the sort of feeling from publishers right now about publishing books based on video games or based on the subject matter of video games?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of good stuff out, with Jason Schreier's books. He's in the book as well. He really liked my platform. I had to give him a sample chapter and stuff, so they like my writing. And they liked this premise because they liked that it's pretty approachable. It's pretty episodic. You can skip around the years as you go. Or if you read them all at once, then it tells a pretty complete history, I think. But you're not pressured to have to read the whole thing to get something out of it. And just this notion from the very beginning, the idea was to have all these other contributors in it as well. So we were pretty excited to have all that in the book as well.
And you got the foreword written by someone who's written more books than he's read, Dan Reichert.
Yes.
That was pretty cool. I read that, and I thought he actually did a pretty good job. Dan, turns out, can write. I like
Yeah,
that.
it turns out, yeah.
What was it like sort of getting all those contributors to come in there? Because I know like you had to hound me a little bit to get mine finished and stuff like that. Was it like herding cats a lot of times?
Yeah, it was big. It was maybe like a 3-month process from all the initial kind of outreach, then everything being finalized. But book publishing compared to the internet is a lot slower just in general, so it was okay. Yeah, I had to kind of reach out to people. But I think it ended up working out because there was a lot of great writing from a really, really broad swath of really great contributors.
Seems pretty cool. So when you guys get the book, actually tell people like where they can go right now if they are interested in this book.
Yeah, you can get it from Amazon, from Barnes & Noble, directly from Abrams. If you follow me on Twitter at Jordan W. Miner, I tweet out the link to my link tree a lot that has a lot of different kind of international options as well. CMag, where I write primarily, there's a good preview of all the some of the artwork. Vulture has a sample chapter out right now about Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. But yeah, I mean, wherever books are sold, I guess is the answer there.
Very cool. Yeah, it's so when you get the book, when it arrives, just go right to 2003. I'm right in there. That's what you read first. Then you can read the rest of the book, of course.
Actually, though, you are not in that chapter. Your game was from 2003, but the way the contributors work is I tried to match them with
that's right
things that I felt were more thematically appropriate.
That's right. I remember that now. Yeah. How'd you come to that decision?
Because I wanted the book to almost feel a little bit non-linear in that sense too. Like you're going linearly through the games of the year, but then you might see something from like way off, that has a connection to it. So if we go to, I'm just going to show up this art. Let's
do it. Yeah, it's very good. Yes.
If you go to 1993, the pick is NBA Jam.
That's right. Yes.
You see this awesome art from Ren McDonald, who did all this art for us. So this main chapter is written by me. It's about NBA Jam. There's also a runner-up about Myst from 1993 as well. And then finally, there's NBA Street Volume 2 from Jeff Grubb.
There it is.
Right here at the end of the chapter.
That's
kind of how they're structured.
I like that too, because you're right. The non-linear aspect too of like jumping around, it keeps you on your toes as a reader, and I really like that. That was pretty cool. I of course got there by just control Fing Jeff Grubb. Like, I mean, I'm a normal person. Of course, I did that. Yeah. But now I'm reading through the whole thing, and it's been very good. All right, you know what? Let's get into this show, Jordan. Thanks for
thing though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Please
bring this up.
Please.
We have some beef.
Oh no. Okay. What have I done now?
When Mario Maker 2 came out in 2019, in the pre-release period, I was making a lot of really trollish, really hard levels.
Yes.
Under my wife's name. Well, my girlfriend at the time, not my wife, under my wife's name. And you played one of those levels, and you said the name of my wife, and you said you were a bad person. And I had a visceral reaction to that, even though it was very fair, because it was a very hard level.
Look, listen, if you don't want your wife catching strays, like you've got to put your own name on there. Like that's not on me. Those levels were trollish, and hey, now I know Jordan Miner is the bad person. All right, record corrected. We got it out there.
Yes,
that's very cool. Okay, that's fun. I didn't realize that. That's good stuff. Yes, cancel me. Let's make it happen, everybody. All right, let's get into this show. But before we do, let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Okay, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with everything we learned from the Microsoft versus FTC hearing. So there is a lot of stuff about the battle between Microsoft and FTC itself, but as we expected, now that these things are actually going to court and there's discovery and each side has a chance to go through the other's emails and stuff like that, interesting tidbits are leaking. We're going to mix between like those two things of the actual results of this case and the fun little tidbits. But we'll start here with James Batchelor at gamesindustry.biz. The court hearing between the Federal Trade Commission and Microsoft began yesterday as the former tries to win a preliminary injunction against the latter's proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard. The FTC has already been granted a temporary block until these proceedings have been completed. It's now pushing for the preliminary injunction it requested on the belief that Microsoft and Activision planned to complete the $69 billion transaction before its own administrative hearing in August, which followed the legal challenge issued against the deal in December. Naturally, much of the arguments have been the same as throughout the entire process, with the FTC arguing that Microsoft ownership of Activision Blizzard will impact competition in the console space and affect consumers, expecting Microsoft to make the Call of Duty exclusive to Xbox. Meanwhile, over at Microsoft, they are arguing that the deal is about bringing more players to more devices. So we're going to jump around here a little bit. Let's see, this story from James Batchelor has some headlines, and then we'll kind of go deeper on each of these things. Let's start here with Xbox Vice President Sarah Bond testified that Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick demanded special treatment, specifically a more favorable revenue share, and threatened to pull Call of Duty from Xbox platforms if Microsoft didn't agree. So let's see. Let's jump down here. And this is a story from Tom Ivan at VGC. Xbox claims Activision demanded a bigger revenue share. Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick demanded a greater share of Call of Duty sales in order to bring the blockbuster series to Xbox Series X and S. That's according to Xbox corporate vice president Sarah Bond, who was giving evidence on Thursday during Microsoft's court battle against the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, which is seeking to block the company's proposed $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard. In the run-up to the Xbox Series X and S launch in 2020, Bond claimed that Activision boss Kotick demanded an improvement on the industry's dominant revenue split model, which is typically 70-30, and they wanted an 80-20. What the story basically says is that Activision got their way there because Microsoft realized that Activision might actually pull Call of Duty for real and was holding a lot of leverage there. That sounds right to me, Jordan. Those games they are that big, and it's not surprising that Activision threw their weight around, right?
Yeah, I guess what's curious to me about that is it almost sounds like she's kind of throwing him under the bus a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think I wonder if there's sort of a gentleman's agreement between Microsoft and Activision that, like, you could throw Activision and Bobby Kotick under the bus a little bit because they're getting the big golden parachute, right? Like, they have to keep being the bad guy, the bad cop. And because that makes Microsoft look better if they are going to acquire this company and kind of clean things up and make them behave a little bit better. But at the same time, like, this is a business. They're allowed to, like, if you have a product that's in demand, you're allowed to get more money from it. But again, this just makes Kotick look like a little bit of a bully, but bullying to Microsoft, who really cares? But like, yeah, that 80-20 split, I thought like 70-30 on consoles was like pretty rock solid, and it's hard to get out of it. I suppose it probably still is, but if any game was going to break out of that mold, Call of Duty makes sense that it was the one, right?
Doesn't Epic have a different split too? Or I think you're seeing some other kind of examples of people trying to. Yeah, and also, I mean, that was like the whole basis of all the Epic Fortnite App Store stuff was them bristling against these kind of old standards of revenue splitting. But
yeah, and like we never, I don't remember if we had explicitly heard that there was a different revenue split for Fortnite, but the way that Epic behaves, where it's like, we're just worried about Apple and Google. These consoles, they're fine. It makes it sound like they might have their own deal, and they're not allowed to talk about it, not allowed to spoil that or whatever. That makes some sense. Do you think that now that this is out there, the 80-20 split for Call of Duty, that this is going to begin to erode that 70-30 for other games? Like, everyone else is going to be like, hey, because this apparently the judge or the plaintiffs, the FTC wasn't supposed to actually say the number 80-20. I think that was supposed to be redacted. So now it's out there. Do you think other publishers are going to come and say, hey, we need 80-20?
I think it depends. I think it might depend on just how this whole ultimate story ultimately shakes out. Of whether or not any of this was even worth doing at all. Like, would people like want to even like rock look at all the drama it's caused them over the years and years. Like, do we even want to like rock the boat like for an extra 10%?
Right.
It'd be hard to separate those things.
And there's I think consoles are really predictable in terms of the audience you can reach, and you got to keep that relationship with those big publishers or the big platform holders pretty good, because they can somewhat make or break your games in terms of the placement and how they present you on the store. Although that would probably be illegal if they were to retaliate against someone for trying to ask for 80-20. So I don't know. I bet that this does begin to loosen that number a little bit more than it already was, which seemed to be sort of doomed on a long-term scale, because it's like, there was a lot of pushback against it. It's quieted up somewhat. But clearly there are big enough games out there to make demands of it. And I think a lot of these companies will come in there and say so. See, on a related note, this goes back to the James Basher story. On a related note, Bond admitted Microsoft occasionally agrees to an 80-20 revenue split rather than a traditional 70-30, but only where we believe it was critical to get that content. It's like, so I bet that is exactly what you were talking about with Fortnite. That seems like the kind of thing where it's like, hey, we got to keep Epic happy. We're not as big as PlayStation. We got to give them a little bit more money to keep things even, so we get all of the same stuff as all the other platforms. I wonder if there's any other situations, though. It's like those two games, and then I'm not sure what else could possibly be 80-20.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, Mike, it just sounds like money hat stuff from back in the day.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Our rule says FIFA must ask for 80-20. I wouldn't be surprised by that. EA and Microsoft have, again, they have like that good relationship where EA loves supporting Xbox, but I wonder if that's because EA has a pretty, like a sweetheart deal across the board, maybe. I don't know.
I wonder, is it connected to just when certain third-party games have kind of like co-marketing deals and stuff like that? If that's maybe wrapped up in it too, or
yeah, or it's like they have a co-marketing deal with PlayStation, so they're like, hey, we're just getting straight up cash from PlayStation, so we're okay with the 70-30 split over there because we're getting cash and their promotional stuff. What are you gonna do for us? Like, we can't like have you promote us because that we already have that with PlayStation, but what can you do to make this, can you sweeten the pot a little bit? And it seems like this is the one thing that Microsoft could move around pretty easily to keep those games level and keep getting the same stuff as PlayStation. So again, it makes a lot of sense. All right, moving on. According to IGN, Bond also claimed the majority of Xbox cloud gaming players use it as a console feature rather than as a service. This is something that we've heard Phil say a bunch of times now, where it's like people use it to try games out before downloading them, and then that's pretty much it. She did say that they are working on a dedicated version of Xbox Cloud Gaming that is separate from Xbox Game Pass, so that you could buy games and then stream them, or stream games that you already have in your library that aren't in Game Pass. But it has a significantly higher operational costs. And Microsoft has since made partnerships with other cloud gaming services to facilitate that. This is how I use cloud gaming, Jordan, where it's like I'm just trying stuff. When I'm traveling, I'm just going to play something natively on my Steam Deck or something like that. Cloud gaming is too unreliable for me to really be okay with it otherwise. But I don't know. How do you use it, or do you use it at all?
Only to cover it, only to just as a tech journalist. But it's not something I would use in my kind of regular gaming life. You're right. Yeah, just the lag, and it's just when like they're like the same price too. It's like I'm not really gaining anything from this. Yeah, I'm also just not a huge graphics person, so I'd rather a game look a little bit worse a lot of the time than to have it actually there than to get like the most, the best looking version of it streaming. So yeah,
I'm there with you where it's like if I've definitely found that since playing on the Steam Deck, where it's like, as long as it feels good, I'm good. Even if it looks pretty rough or fuzzy, 720p, with DLSS, so it actually is super fuzzy. No, that stuff is fine as long as it feels good when I'm playing. All right, so let's see here. An email from PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan shared in court and reported on by IGN showed the exec was initially unconcerned by the proposed acquisition. And that takes us to Darren Bonthus at GameSpot, who writes, at the first day of the legal battle between Microsoft and the Federal Trade Commission, a major piece of evidence has been presented in court. Microsoft's counsel has revealed an exchange between Sony's PlayStation chief, Jim Ryan, and a former Sony CEO, in which the PlayStation boss discusses his belief that Microsoft's proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard isn't an exclusivity play to lock games to Xbox. Here's the quote from Ryan. From that private email. It is not an exclusivity play at all. They're thinking bigger than that, and they have the cash to make moves like this. I've spent a fair amount of time with both Phil Spencer and Bobby Kotick, and I'm pretty sure we will continue to see Call of Duty on PlayStation for years to come. He then went on to say things like, we'll be okay. We're going to be more than okay. So yeah, this runs exactly counter to what he said publicly after this. But I don't do you feel like this is like a slam dunk for Microsoft in terms of countering what's been said publicly or not?
I think that everyone kind of thought that he probably believed this anyway.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. It's like this.
He would have
that
he would have a plan in case it went through, because that's probably still the more likely thing. That's like what Microsoft has said, that they'll still have Call of Duty on PlayStation for like at least like a decade. And they would be dumb not to. Like, that's also just kind of objective business sense, I think.
Yeah, and so it's like, but at the same, I think he could argue, Jim Ryan, like, I was talking to my CEO and trying to quell his concerns and put on a brave face. And he's like, I think he could easily argue. Now, he's not at the FTC hearing. He's not speaking to it in person. He sent over a video, so maybe he won't be able to speak to these points. But if he were, or the FTC could argue that they spoke to him and said, hey, he was just trying to put on a brave face, and then go out and make that true by fighting against it and make sure that they can get the best deal possible and all this stuff. But it reads like, hey, I talked to Phil and Kotick, and they gave me assurances that we're going to keep getting this thing. And to accept that privately and then publicly say the opposite, it does. I think this is a pretty big check mark in the W column for Microsoft in this battle. I don't necessarily know if it's going to convince the FTC all that much, though. I think in public opinion, it might help, but in terms of winning over the FTC, that seems like a pretty tough battle. It might help with the judge, though, with this injunction.
The bigger philosophical question is, do executives really believe in anything? Do they think that any...
I don't know. I think it's their job specifically to not believe in anything. It's to just, operate as a shark and always consume more for the company and get it bigger and bigger and never sleep. And yeah, so I think that's where, like, people got mad about Xbox and the 60 frames per second thing. And I'm like, man, what can I do if you bought into the marketing? These companies will just say anything. Like, of course they were like, this 60 frames per second is going to be the standard. And sure, standard, and a lot of games still are going to be 60 frames per second. But when they start talking about their features in the future, you got to be skeptical. I don't know what else to say.
Whereas when I say that this is the best book about video games, I'm telling the truth.
Well, yeah, that's just the fact.
It's objective fact.
Objective fact right there. All right. Court documents reviewed by IGN suggested that the expected starting period for the next generation of consoles is 2028. Let's hop back down here. Now, this is from Joseph Yadin at GameSpot. The next console generation, including the PS6 and the new Xbox system, may start in 2028. This is according to court documents from the ongoing legal battle between Microsoft and the United States Federal Trade Commission regarding the massive $69 billion Activision Blizzard acquisition. The document, as reviewed by IGN, lines up with previous statements made by Sony in 2022, indicating that the next console generation won't start until at least 2027. Jordan, this sounds right to me. The consoles came out in 2020. 2028 would make it an 8-year cycle, something that has happened before with the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. That went from, like, the Xbox came out in 2005. The next one came out in 2013. Then the generation after that was 7 years, because those consoles were pretty underpowered to begin, and I think they were ready to jump onto something a little bit quicker. But I think 7 to 9 years is the period between of the new console cycle. Does that sound right to you?
Sounds right to me. I think the only things that would maybe throw this off are the pandemic, obviously, and also just the idea that if console cycles need to change to be more in sync with just kind of modern dev times, because otherwise we see all these instances of, like, developers making like one game per generation because it takes so long to make. So I don't know if console generations might shift to reflect that. I would prefer that game dev times would shift to kind of go back to where they were. Like that might, I think, kind of create some tension.
Yeah, you got. I mean, that's been a talking point since Matt Booty said that on the Giant Bomb Couch. Was it's like, hey, games are taking 5 to 6 to 7 years to make, and it's like, I think I know at the time I was like, yeah, we noticed that's true. But it's like, is there any way to put? I'm of the opinion. So, like, at the time when he said that, I was like, yeah, totally. But it's like the people are like, oh, maybe it should be shorter. I'm like, yeah, like, I guess I just accept that. I wonder if it's even possible for game dev to, like, move back in that direction where things are smaller. And, like, Phil followed up by saying, like, people talk about, we get new technologies all the time, and then people say, oh, this is going to make development teams smaller and people are going to be able to do more with less. And he's like, that never happens. We do more with more, and we use that technology, but then we go deeper on everything. And I always point to Unreal Engine 5 has that, like, press a button to make an open world city. Like, it's, like, super easy to make a complete open world city, like we've seen in GTA 3 and everything since. And that was, like, the stuff that took up all the development time of an art team and a graphics team to build that stuff up. And now you can do it with a button. But that doesn't mean that all those people that did all that work making open world cities are going to, like, lose their jobs. It means they're going to get to work on making the interiors of buildings and filling up the world with interesting stuff. And it's like, now they're going to just make games even bigger. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to go backward. I mean, maybe if there's some like major financial crash or something like that, but that also feels like the biggest games are going to keep doing better, and even in that scenario. And so you have to keep up with the Joneses, and I think games are just going to keep getting bigger, which is like worrisome. Like to your point, like one game per generation from a lot of these developers, is that even sustainable?
I feel like just as a player, the benefits are not as obvious to me as even they were a couple generations ago. Like I just imagine the scenario where you present me with one game that took like 10 years to make, and you give me 2 games that took, or like 4 games that took 2 years to make. And you know, I wonder like would I rather like if the difference was worth it for me as a player. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think we are going to keep getting those smaller games from other developers, and I think that's the actual answer here is like, yeah, like let the giant conglomerates keep making their big swings, and then let's hopefully these tools, as they do get easier, mean that more smaller teams can make more games even faster, and we could just kind of sift through the million games releasing on Steam to find those really good ones. And that's kind of what we've been doing. It's mostly been working. There's been a lot of good games that I've found coming up from the bottom instead of just being handed to us from a major publisher.
As long as all the publishers' hopes and dreams aren't resting on this one like load-bearing pillar, that if it doesn't work, then they're just cooked.
Yes, that's, and you know, I don't know if it's in this story from James Batcher. I read through it. I don't remember it being in there, so I'll bring it up now since it's pertinent. Pete Hines spoke exactly to that point about like what drives their decision making is like when they were an independent publisher, one hit or one miss or one failure was going to be a significant detriment to their bottom line. It was going to cause them major issues, and so they had to like operate in this environment of fear, of risk, and so yeah, I think that's then they spoke like, okay, so now under Microsoft, like we're happy to just make a game for Xbox because we don't have to sell as many as possible just to make this thing, to justify the entire thing that we're doing here. And it's like, man, that does sound nice, and it sounds very scary for independent publishers. But that's the truth. Is like, I don't think it's not just independent publishers. I think like if a big $200 million Sony game like bombed, I think they would be like, man, that's going to really hurt all of our other things, because that's money we needed to recoup and get back and to pay for everything else. People say like the current model of game development is unsustainable. Do you think that, or do you think there's a reckoning coming with this stuff?
I completely think it's unsustainable as well. I totally agree with that. I agree with that.
Yep. That's where I'm like, something will change. I don't think it's going to be like an earthquake that completely like shifts the plates underneath us, where suddenly the development model looks completely different. But I'm hoping like there's just efficiencies made that improve things for everybody and improve the work environment for the developers. All right, let's see here. Moving on. Let me sort of find where I left off in this James Batcher story. Yes. Axios' Stephen Totillo shared comments from Jim Ryan, who said Sony would not be able to share details about the next PlayStation console with a Microsoft-controlled Activision. We talked about this one a little bit yesterday, but like, yeah, of course not. Of course, they're not going to do that. Totillo also reported on the FTC's claims that the 10-year deals between Microsoft and companies such as Nvidia and Nintendo promising Xbox and Activision games for their platforms are, quote, filled with loopholes and speculative commitments. I wonder about that. Like, if Microsoft is making those deals and trying to win over the FTC and all these other regulators, you think they would make it as rock solid as possible that they're going to stick to their words. And if they didn't, that's on Microsoft, right? Like that, like they should have. They can't just be saying these things. They have to actually walk the walk, right?
Yeah, I mean, they did. I feel like they did a lot of them in a really short period of time that were all kind of the same thing. And that in a way that felt a little desperate. Maybe is not.
I think so. It definitely is. Yeah. You know. It's I think that if they were just rushing through them and not like really shoring up in terms of making sure that they are unassailable in their legalese, then Microsoft deserves to kind of get slapped back and say, like, these aren't good enough. You actually have to do more. I think though Microsoft's probably prepared to do more if the FTC wants to come and say, if we're going to approve this deal, the caveats are you are legally bound in an agreement with the United States government that you're going to do this. And I think Microsoft will be like, all right, fine, we'll do that, whatever. All right, let's see here. A court filing spotted by The Verge ahead of the hearing saw Microsoft continue to position itself as the underdog of the console space. The platform holder's lawyer wrote, Xbox has lost the console wars and its rivals are positioned to continue to dominate, including by leveraging exclusive content Xbox is consistently ranked third in consoles behind PlayStation and Nintendo. I think this is where like a lot of the confusion comes from, like from these regulators, where it's like you're in third place, but you're Microsoft and you are a $2 trillion company. Should we really be which thing should we be like weighing more heavily? You being in third place in games, or you being a $2 trillion company? And I think it's a hard thing to balance, right?
Yeah, I mean, I talk about this in some group chats. We call this the small bean defense. And we find it pretty eye rolling, actually, for Microsoft to position themselves as an underdog. Frankly, like, yeah, they've sold, the past 2 generations, kind of, they've been in third place, but they're still huge, and they're still they still sell like millions and millions of consoles. They never had like a Wii U situation.
Yeah.
They're so prominent on PC. And they're Microsoft, and they already spent billions acquiring other companies. That I'm pretty skeptical of that. And also, console wars can flip on a dime too. Like, that's happened in the past as well. So it's not like they're locked into third place forever by any means.
Yeah, that's like Phil's, when he was on that Kind of Funny, he was arguing against that, saying like, the last generation was the wrong one to lose, where everyone built their digital libraries, and they're not going to abandon that and suddenly go to a different console. They're going to stick with that digital library forever. So in terms of things flipping on its head again, they don't believe that's going to happen. I think console space is still, anything can happen for the most part, but I do agree that with him that it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But going into Starfield is a must-have game that everyone has to play. Things could change pretty significantly, I think. So I think you're right. But that to being a $2 trillion company and then just going, I'm just a simple country video game console maker.
Exactly. Ooh,
yeah. It's the country bumpkin thing doesn't really fly, and I think that is Microsoft's always making sort of an error there, trying to be like, we're in third place in gaming. I think they just need to be like, instead of talking about their position, I think they need to talk about how strong Sony is in gaming and say, this will benefit the market because we can compete with Sony in these ways, we'll finally be able to get our heads above water or something like that, because we just know that's not how it is working over at Microsoft. Speaking of exclusivity, IGN reported that the original agreement between ZeniMax and Disney was for the upcoming Indiana Jones game to be a multi-platform title. However, Bethesda's Pete Hines revealed this was amended. That takes us down to right here. Where do I have that? Yes, there we go. Bethesda's Indiana Jones game is now an Xbox exclusive. Excuse me, this comes from Andy Robson of VGC. Bethesda's in-development Indiana Jones game is now an Xbox exclusive console game. It's been confirmed. The exclusivity was confirmed by publishing boss Pete Hines on Thursday, who was speaking in court during the opening day of Microsoft's legal battle with the Federal Trade Commission, which is seeking to block its acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Hines was asked by FTC lawyers to confirm if, before Bethesda was acquired by Microsoft, Disney had signed an agreement with its parent ZeniMax to make an Indiana Jones game for multiple consoles, to which Hines replied yes. The publishing boss was then asked to confirm if, after Microsoft's acquisition, Disney brought up the issue of which console the Indiana Jones game would be released for. Hines again replied yes. He then confirmed that Bethesda has later amended the Disney agreement and that the Indiana Jones game will now only be coming to Xbox and PC, and a day one release on Xbox Game Pass. So this is the first time they've done that for one of these acquisitions. Mostly for any game that's been announced to be coming to PlayStation 5 publicly, they kept those agreements. Indiana Jones never announced any platforms, so I think they felt a little bit more comfortable making this move, and I'm not too surprised that they did it. Even if it might hurt their things in this case, but at this point, who cares? Indiana Jones coming exclusive to Xbox, is that exciting to you, or does it sound like, they might treat it like a big first-party game?
Yeah, I think that makes sense too, because an Indiana Jones game is never going to compete with a Star Wars game in terms of
yeah,
that's fine. I think Disney will be okay with that because
yes, true.
I think it becomes more exciting as an exclusive compared to whatever could have been lost. Compared to, again, they would never do that with a Star Wars game. Yeah,
and I think Indiana Jones has not been able to cross over its appeal with new generations in the way that Star Wars has, and so it's like it's going to be speaking to a dwindling audience. So kind of getting that guaranteed Microsoft taking responsibility for this game kind of money for this, and then hoping for the best is probably something that Disney was okay with. And then I think this is one of those games where I want it to be treated like a Marvel Spider-Man. I want it to be treated like as good as any other first party like big
Uncharted.
release.
It'd be like they're Uncharted.
Uncharted, yes, this could finally like. Microsoft doesn't really have any of those. I know Lord Cognito over at the Iron Lords podcast always says #just1 because he wants Microsoft just to make one game like a Sony's house style games. And it's like this Indiana Jones could be it, although also it could be a first party game or excuse me, a first person game because it is machine games. Who knows? But if it's not, it could easily be their Uncharted. And I want it to be at that level. I am an Indiana Jones fan, so I do find that exciting. But also, I have an Xbox, I have a PC, so I was gonna play this no matter what. But yeah, that is pretty cool. Do you think we hear about this game anytime soon, or do you think it's still pretty far off?
I think if they were going to talk about it, well, did they already have D23 and kind of these Disney events?
Yeah, they did one earlier this year already, I think, right?
Okay, so maybe that. I mean, this movie just came out. Maybe they want that to kind of be the big Indiana Jones focus for the time being, before kind of confusing people with another thing.
Yeah. I'm speaking of being confused. I just someone just posted a image of the Sonic presentation, and there's a Lego Sonic that is tied up with ropes and has duct tape over his mouth. You know what? I'll get this up for everybody here real quick. I do not know what is happening over at Sega right now. I think they are. Someone should go check on our boys over there. Make sure they're doing
speaking
okay.
of the console wars, just changing on a dime.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, do you think that the video game industry still fundamentally kind of works the same way as it did back in the 90s and the early 2000s, where it's like a new player could come in or something like that, or a company could get Sega, or has things sort of solidified?
I argue in this book that it's over. That Microsoft slid in at the last moment with kind of the Sega void. Sony proving that it could be done kind of from this more tech angle. And then Microsoft slid in there, and it's done.
Here's our boy Sonic, tied up. Yeah, just absolutely in bondage. The bondage of Sonic. There it is. I have no idea what is going on.
The sequel to the murder of Sonic?
I hope so. The Bondage of Sonic would be a very good follow-up to that. I would play that visual novel, if you know what I mean. All right, let's get back into this story. All right. See, Totil also. All right, now I'm caught up. Ars Technica reported that the FTC pointed to Zenimax exclusives on Xbox platforms as powerful evidence that Microsoft's assurances of multi-platform Call of Duty cannot be trusted. This is something that I think is got to be the weakest point for Microsoft, and the thing that they are most likely to, if they're going to lose, it's going to be on this kind of stuff where it's like, hey, you already did this once with Bethesda, and all of the reasoning for why you would make a Bethesda game, all the incentives are the same for all these other games. So why should we trust you when you say you won't do the same with Call of Duty? And I think Microsoft can then get into the weeds, the nuance of here's why Call of Duty is different. Here's why a bunch of other Activision games are different. I think that as soon as they get into that explanation, they're kind of like they're coming from behind, right? Because people already look at like the compelling evidence that FTC is putting out there, and like that just makes sense. You did it once, you would do it again, right?
Yeah, I mean, they shouldn't trust them. They should just hold them to a contract, which is what I think Microsoft has proposed with these 10-year deals, and they should make sure they stick to those. Because with the Bethesda stuff, like you said, they held to the games that were announced for PlayStation 5. I'm sure those agreements were in place for the other games that didn't have those agreements. So they need to, they should get it in writing. They shouldn't trust them. But I do think Microsoft would agree to that. I mean, they proposed it.
Yeah, I think that's probably the middle ground that they actually end up landing on. The deal goes through, but the FTC, CMA, and the EU probably get together and propose a bunch of caveats that Microsoft has to agree to and is contractually obligated to stick to in an agreement, not just with these other companies and with Sony and Nvidia, but with the regulators themselves. That seems the most likely scenario. Axios reported Xbox Game Studios' Matt Booty was further questioned about Microsoft's exclusivity strategy, with the FTC's lawyers citing emails Booty wrote in 2019 and 2021, in which he said there was no fucking way Microsoft should bring its titles to rival platforms and services. Booty acknowledged that he was frustrated at the time over Nvidia's handling of Microsoft games on GeForce Now, with Nvidia initially adding companies' libraries automatically, but that Microsoft strategy has since changed. So he's like, he was speaking like, because Nvidia GeForce Now, if people don't remember at the beginning, just had every game on your Steam list available for you to stream on NVIDIA GeForce Now. It just acted like, no, there's a computer in the cloud. That's your computer. And if you want a game, go ahead and go for it. These companies are like, you cannot stream our game. That's against our like terms of service or whatever. And Microsoft was pretty mad about that. Do you buy that argument from Booty that the strategy has changed, and or do you think this is just them reacting to the realities of this acquisition?
I'm not sure actually. I mean, because they are really trying to triple down on streaming here, and that is kind of like a pretty recent development. It's pretty like the momentum is pretty shot up pretty quickly. So I think I'm open to believing that it has changed. But I don't really have a firm take on this.
Yeah, it's hard to like read it, and I think my skeptical side, my cynical side here is like every sort of like softened position that Microsoft has taken feels like it was informed by a lawyer coming and telling them this is the position to take that is going to make this deal the most likely to go through. But I guess perception is reality. If they're going to like put that forward at the same, they're going to kind of have to they're going to have to walk the walk, and we'll see how that actually ends up looking.
I helped negotiate a union contract. This is all flashbacks to all those days.
I bet. Yes, I bet that's all right. Can we get this company to soften up? Yes. All right. We talked about this, so let's hop down now to The Outer Worlds 2 might end up on PlayStation still. This comes from Alex Hopley at Game Reactor. The head of Xbox Studios, Matt Booty, has said that a decision has not been made regarding The Outer Worlds 2 being an Xbox exclusive. This means the title could come to PlayStation, but considering Obsidian is a part of Xbox Studios, many thought this was unlikely. Now, at a cross-examination during the court case between Microsoft and the FTC over the former's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, Matt Booty said that the Green Team haven't yet decided whether The Outer Worlds 2 will be an exclusive or not. The Outer Worlds 2 was announced at E3 2021, and while this was after Microsoft acquired Obsidian, it could be the case that work on the game started then. With it being a sequel to Xbox may not want to rob PlayStation players of getting to continue the story. Obsidian also worked with Private Division on The Outer Worlds, which is a Take-Two company under 2K. And so it's like, I do believe that Outer Worlds 2, though, will be published by Microsoft, but they might, like this says, like, hey, we started on PlayStation, we may want to continue it. At the same time, this goes back to that cynicism where it's like, I think he might be saying that because they were getting grilled on the stand about making all these other games exclusive, including going out of their way to make Indiana Jones an exclusive. Do you buy this one, that there's a chance that Outer Worlds 2 could come to PlayStation?
There's a chance, yeah. I mean, like it says there, like it's a sequel. It's a cool game. It's like a smaller game, so it's a kind of a good one to potentially offer up. Obsidian is doing Avowed, which I'm sure will be exclusive. It wasn't Pentiment. That's also exclusive. That didn't come out on PlayStation.
That is correct. Yep. And those feel like the kinds of things where it's like Ori and the Will of the Wisp and Ori and the Blind Forest. Those came to Switch. I think they might have came even to PlayStation eventually. I don't remember.
Cuphead came out and everything, and that was kind of a similar deal.
Right. So they those are deals with I suppose third-party studios, but those were first-party published games, or at least the Ori games definitely were. And so it's like, yeah, Microsoft has done this, so I think they're trying to just keep that on the table to be like, hey, we consider every game differently, which was the position they kept going back to, where it's like, for the Bethesda games, we're going to treat every game differently and do what's best for each game. And for Starfield, it made sense to make that exclusive because it's so big, and we could put it out on Xbox, and PC, and not worry about also doing QA for PlayStation. Pete Hines even said that would have pushed out the release date for Starfield even further than what it already was. So it's like, they're making these arguments. Again, I'm not sure how much they're moving the needle for.
That's very frustrating, though, to kind of live in this ambiguous space of like sort of Schrodinger's first party.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and there was, again, going back to these private emails, when Microsoft announced the acquisition of Activision, and Phil Spencer wrote a blog about how they're going to make sure that they keep Call of Duty third party, or not third party, but keep it on all systems. And they might do that with a lot of other Activision games. Pete Hines wrote an angry email saying, hey, what the hell? Why does it work this way for them, but not for us? And then they had a call, and so there was no more emails about like that they could have in the court case. But it's like, he seemed pretty pissed about that. So yeah, I bet that is very frustrating for them. And again, this feels like stuff that Microsoft should have figured out and explained in excruciating detail to their teams. So there is not moments where it's like a Pete Hines is writing what the hell is going on.
There's like $70 billion involved.
Yes, exactly. Like he kind of feels like you got to cross every T and dot every I. How big is Starfield? Well, it's irresponsibly large, says Bethesda executive. This comes from Owen Good at Polygon. Starfield, coming this fall and already twice delayed, is an irresponsibly large game, according to Pete Hines, who was actually quoting Todd Howard there. Hines made the comment in testimony during Thursday's hearing in federal court, where the U.S. Federal Trade Commission is seeking to stop Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard. The point Hines was making is that developing Starfield for platforms other than Windows PC or Xbox would assuredly mean another delay for the newest role-playing franchise from Bethesda Softworks, which Microsoft now owns. The game does seem irresponsibly large. I think that's actually a good way of putting it. But once again, like, do you buy that this is going to help the game, that it's only coming to Xbox?
Well, one, also that description just makes me think of like a snack food or something, like dangerously cheesy or something.
Excruciatingly bold.
It's funny. I mean, what's interesting about this whole court stuff is having to hear these people basically have to tell the truth and not do kind of marketing spin.
Yes.
So like that they're saying that like on the stand is really funny to me. I'm like, Your Honor, blast processing. Yeah.
This was, and he's like, I'm just quoting what Todd Howard said. Like, he doesn't have to prove that it's irresponsibly large, but because someone else said it, I'm just quoting him. So it's like I could still kind of say that, and it does feel like Pete Hines always be closing. Like, he's always trying to make that sale. That's his job. And even on the stand, he's going to do that. But yeah, it was like that stood out because you're right. The rest of the time they were just like answering truthfully and making sure that they didn't put any spin on it. And it was very different context to hear many of these people speak in, because we are so used to them being in sales mode nonstop. Todd Howard confirms how many of Starfield's planets will have life in multiple biomes. We're kind of finally coming out of all the stories coming out of that court case. This one actually comes from the kind of funny interview with Todd Howard via Joe Craven at Twinfinite. Bethesda's Todd Howard has revealed just how many of Starfield's planets will support their own forms of life, and it's very good news for explorers among the player base. Starfield is set to be one of the biggest launches in recent memory when it drops in early September 2023. Bethesda are drip feeding fans details as its launch approaches, and in a June 22nd interview with Kinda Funny Games, game director Todd Howard delved deeper into the game's intricate universe and planet systems. Not only did NASA help Bethesda make the galaxy as realistic as possible, the developers have revealed that in true No Man's Sky style, the planet's players' encounters will be unique to them, with over 1,000 featuring in Starfield, which will generate depending on players' character, progress, and requirements. Actually, a little correction. That's not how No Man's Sky works. No Man's Sky is actually, it is procedurally generated, but it uses the same exact procedures for every single person who plays the game. So it's actually the same exact universe for everybody. It's just, as you go on, like it does those procedures to show you the planets and figure out like where you are at the time, but it's not unique to you. When asked about the game's planets and whether there'll be enough to do on them, Howard explained that the planet's intricacies were something the development team struggled with early on. They've since overcome those difficulties, handcrafting individual locations on the planets, with the planet forming around those core places of interest and regions. Here's a quote. For us, we view it as, here's the menu of things you could do, and like science, we're pushing it. About 10% of those planets have life on them. We're pushing it to the edge of what planets are in that Goldilocks zone versus planets that have resources. 10% of planets have alien life on them. That sounds about right to me, but I'm someone who's like, I've said this elsewhere, I like getting stuck in the mud and spin tires and feeling like real physics and really struggling to like get my truck unstuck. I like the idea of going to a planet and it just has rocks. To me, that is interesting. I think a lot of people view that as, where is the content? Jordan, where do you fall on that spectrum?
I'm interested. So they've said 1,000 numbers is like the set number, or 1,000 planets is like the set number.
Yeah.
I'm just curious that then if they're gonna have a set number, like what's the difference? Like if the hook isn't gonna be like infinite planets that no one could ever possibly see because it's infinite, like what most players would any like even do, like what is really the difference between having 1,000 planets and even like 100 planets?
Sure. I think I think that's something they're gonna have to prove. I wonder, like, how did they settle on 1,000? I bet 100 planets is the kind of thing where it's like, that actually doesn't feel big enough. 1,000, I bet they're looking at it this way, Jordan. What's the difference between 1,000 planets and infinite planets, according to most people's time? I bet there is a difference in feeling between 100 planets and 1,000 when 100 of the planets of those 1,000 are going to have life on them, and then a fraction of those are going to have intelligent human life that you can actually interact with in settlements and have all of this handcrafted stuff. So I bet they thought that this is the right balance, but I'm gonna have to see it for myself, because it's like right now it feels like I don't know. It sounds like a micro version of No Man's Sky.
But to me, like, it's the idea of it being more bespoke is what's interesting to me. So if you start to lose that, then it's like, well, then why aren't there infinite planets? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess we'll have to see how it plays out. Like, will those bespoke elements that he's talking about that are like that do exist on some of these planets? Is that enough? Does that feel rewarding enough? Because when I say like I like the idea of going to a planet and it's just rocks, I like that because then when I go to the 5th planet and I'm like, you know what? There's just resources here. I'll get the resources and I'll dip out, and then I do spot something on the horizon that is a place of interest. That's going to feel very rewarding and exciting to me. Because it came out of nowhere, and I like that. But those bespoke things need to be pretty unique, I think, so that if I do that process a couple times, it's like, oh, I'm at one of these, alien shrines again, and it's the same exact thing, but now the words are a little bit different. If it's that'll be pretty boring, I think. So a lot of it rides on just how bespoke a lot of those special moments are. All right, last couple stories here. Rumor is that Metal Gear Solid 4 is going to be included in the Master Collection Volume 2. This comes from Olaf Westerberg at Game Reactor. This fall, Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 will be released, containing Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, and the first 2 Metal Gear games from 87 and 90. As many have guessed, Volume 1 suggests that there is likely to be a Volume 2, and now Twitter user Nitroid has unearthed possible signs that not only that it's on the way, Volume 2, but that in addition to Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, and Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, it also includes the now almost mythical Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. Should this be true, it means that the Master Collection Volume 2 will be the very first time for Metal Gear Solid 4 to be released on a format other than the PlayStation 3, where it has been stuck ever since it launched 15 years ago. Now, I've heard like rumors of Sony working on a PlayStation 3 emulator for that it would use to like put some of its games on the PlayStation Classic stuff on PlayStation Network, PS Plus, excuse me. I'm like skeptical that Konami is going to get Metal Gear Solid 4 up and running in an emulator enough itself to then put it everywhere else, including maybe the Switch, because Volume 1's on the Switch. That seems very unlikely. But maybe they actually ended up porting it and did all the work for that, and now they're going to have like a version of Metal Gear Solid 4 they could put out elsewhere from now on. It's kind of just saved. I'm not sure. What's your read on this, Jordan?
I hope it's true, because otherwise, what would even be the point of doing these collections and kind of presenting them in this way, if not to then that be the payoff? Because otherwise, why not just kind of put them out individually,
Yeah.
That kind of seems like that's what this is leading to. And I remember like early demos of like the Vita had like a really low frame rate MGS port on it or something. And there was rumors about a 360 version for years and years.
Yep.
So I think they're probably not. I think it's probably them doing it themselves, not an emulator. But I would guess that it is happening.
Yeah,
it's tough.
I think it's they seem willing to invest in their properties again, and I bet that they were finally able to be like, listen, like you said, we had Metal Gear Solid 4 ported to the Xbox 360, and it's basically ready to go. We just didn't want to put it out on 18 discs or whatever it would have been.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, but now that's not really an issue anymore. We should just continue that work and get a version of it ported to PC that we can then port to everything else from now and into the future. And I think if they just do that work now, save Metal Gear Solid 4, they can continue selling us Metal Gear Solid games over and over and over again for the next 50 years. But they have to do that work eventually. Might as well be now. I hope that's what they end up doing as well. It makes a lot of sense.
They took down 2 and 3 because of some copyright thing or something, and now this is their way to bring that back too. So just to kind of clean it all up, since you're not making new games.
Yeah, but Volume 2 will probably have 5 Phantom Pain and Ground Zeroes, Peace Walker, 4, maybe some of the Acid games. I don't know. Yeah, that sounds maybe Ghost Babel for Game Boy Color.
Yeah, put that on the Switch Online.
Yeah, but yeah, they should just put that on Nintendo Switch Online for sure. All right, finally, fan spends over $3,500 to rant about Splatoon 3 at Nintendo shareholder meeting. This comes from Nintendo Everything. Some bizarre situations have occurred at Nintendo's financial meetings in the past, but one of the strangest happenings took place earlier today. The Big N held its annual shareholder meeting, and per usual, it included a Q&A session. Reports have surfaced that someone was ranting loudly about female characters' perceived preferential treatment in Splatoon 3 regarding customization. This person felt there's a lack of options for male characters, including hairstyles and emotes, compared to those available to the female counterpart. InStyles, who attended the event, says the rant went on before Nintendo President Shuntaro Furukawa interrupted the fan. The attendee was told that his question was too long, to which that was ignored. After continuing the rant, he eventually finished, and Furukawa simply said, "Thank you for your interest in playing our game. We appreciate your valuable opinion." Jordan, would you spend $3,500 to yell at Shintaro Furukawa?
Oh, question.
I like you, and then Sean say, $3,500 Reddit post. Let's go. Exactly. That's exactly what that sounds like.
You can buy the Apple thing for that much, and that would be a better purchase.
You can go in there and look at the visions of Splatoon boys dressed up however you want. I promise you that the internet will provide that for you.
They're also the most like androgynous characters too. So like,
this is bizarre. Anyone can care this much, but hey, I've been in video games. I know that these people are out there. That's how it goes sometimes. Okay, Lego will make an ugly Sonic Lego set if you use the hashtag make Lego Sonic more Eggman. All right, let's bring this
ugly
up
Sonic?
Here. Yeah, ugly Sonic.
Ugly
with teeth.
Okay.
With teeth. Oh my god. All right, here it is, everybody. Let me bring it in here. There's Sonic with teeth, an ugly Sonic. He's also wearing Eggman glasses and stuff. But yeah, that's pretty good. Let's get him to do that. That sounds very fun to me.
They just Sonic.
Yeah, that's just, you know what? Maybe all Sonics are ugly. I said it. Real quick, E3 2024 and 2025 may or may have not been canceled. I was going to include that story, but it's like conflicting information. The LA Convention Center, I believe, had a meeting where they were like, there's not going to be an E3 2024, 2025. And then Games Industry.biz reached out to the ESA and they're like, there's still discussions. Bitch, no, there's not. That's not going to happen. Come on, don't mess with us. We know what's happening there. You guys don't know what your ass from a rat hole. Like, you're not gonna be able to pull this off.
How do you really feel?
All right. I will get to the poll. In the meantime, though, Jordan, one more time, tell people where they could find you on the internet. Tell them about the book one more time as well.
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Jordan W. Miner. You can read me on PC Mag. I write about games and streaming services and all sorts of technology there. And the book is Video Game of the Year. Comes out on July 11th. You can pre-order it now. Unlike with video games, pre-orders for books are very important. So if you're interested, I would love that. If you only know about a little about games, you're an expert, or you know a lot, or you don't, it's a great place to start. I'm really proud of this. I'm really grateful to contributors like you, Grubb.
Of course.
Again, like, I'm not just an egomaniac when I say I really genuinely think that this is the best book about video games, and a huge part of that is because of the contributors as well. If you're a fan of like Giant Bomb's kind of guest game of the year list in years past, that was a big inspiration for the structure of this.
I think that's a very good way to like continue that legacy too. This is a very cool idea for that. Listen, I don't want to be Mr. Video Game where it's like, you just spent 6 years making a video game that took all of your life, and I finished it in a weekend. When is the next one coming? But hey, Jordan, like, is there like an obvious follow-up to this? Is the Video Game of the Year like 2024 like something that like is in the back of your mind, or are you just gonna take some time off and not think about that for a while?
I'm working on things that I shouldn't tease yet, but that in and of itself is a tease. So
that's a good way to do a tease, though. I like that. All right, we got the poll question from yesterday. When do you think we first hear about the Switch 2? 12% said we're gonna hear about it this year in the second half of 2023. 46% believe we won't hear about it until the first half of 2024. Then 27% think we'll have to wait a little bit later than that for the last half of 2024 before we hear about the Switch 2. And then 16% are very just absolute doom and gloom and think we won't hear about a Switch successor until 2025 or later. not even hear about it until 2025 or later. Jordan, where are you at on this sort of spectrum of when we expect to hear about the Switch 2?
I think that we will hear about it in like they used to reveal consoles at sort of E3 period. That's a possibility. I mean, they can't ruin their holiday. They're not like in a Switch situation where it didn't even matter to announce it before the Wii, because the Wii U was already dead.
What are you gonna do? Hurt the Wii U sales? Yeah.
I mean, maybe they talk about it. Maybe they like talk about it in like early 2024, and then it is shown in a more public sense in like E3-ish time of next year, and that's out in the holiday.
Cool. You know what? That sounds about right to me. I think that second half of this year or first half of next year for an announcement, either of those are possible. I'm still, but I don't think it's like only 12% think second half of this year. I think it's much more likely than that, but it's also just as likely to be like Nintendo saying, you know what? No, let's just push it out. We'll do it early next year. But I think it is within the next 12 months for sure when we first hear about it. In a big official way, not just talking about it with investors, which, they just had their Q&A with their investors. And if it came up, we would have heard about it. I haven't looked into the full Q&A list yet. But yeah, if that would have came up, then we would have heard about it. So yeah, they haven't talked about it yet, but I think in an official way in the next 12 months, pretty much guaranteed we're going to hear about it. All right. Let's see. I got a poll question for Monday. We're going to try to run the show. We got Jan out on assignment, but we'll make sure we get it going. The poll question is going to be, do you think that Konami is going to run Metal Gear Solid 4 in an emulator? Are they going to port it? Or are they not going to include it in Volume 2 at all? And I'll try to get it up on the YouTube channel. If I don't, I'll just put it up on Twitter, and we'll either way, we'll answer it on Monday here on giantbomb.com. Speaking of which, later today, UPF, we're going to play some Crash Team Rumble, which, Jordan, that frustrates me that it's CTR, just like Crash Team Racing. Why would they do that?
I don't know. There's a lot of bad decisions were made.
Just a lot of bad decisions everywhere. We also might play Mortal Kombat 1. The stress test is happening.
Another very confusing title for a game.
Yes. Listen, what's in a name, I guess, I suppose, when it comes down to it. If Mortal Kombat 1 has player matches, we'll do it. It's a stress test, so it probably doesn't have player matches. In that case, we'll just probably take turns playing online against randoms. Either way, that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to that. That's a fun game from what I've played so far at Summer Game Fest. Okay, so that's happening later today. We'll start that at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's noon Pacific. Jordan, though, thank you so much for taking today to talk with me about video games, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, this is great. Thank you. Again, thank you for being in the book, and thank you for having me on.
Thank you for asking me to participate. It was honestly, it was an honor. It was really fun to write down some thoughts, and then to see it in there. It means a lot. Thanks for asking. That's very cool. And thank you, everybody, for watching. You're the best audience in gaming. We'll be back Monday with more. Until then, though, have a good one. Take care of yourself. Goodbye, and get Video Game of the Year bookstores very soon. Pre-order right now.